Welcome to Next Step Career Corner. I'm your host, Stephanie Renk, a certified career coach and resume writer. Today, I'm stepping into the guest seat to talk about something I'm deeply passionate about, how leaders can stand out in the job search. And thank you to my buddy, Mark Missiano, who's going to help me with this conversation. So, if you're navigating a transition, eyeing your next big opportunity, or feeling unsure how to communicate your value as a leader, this episode's for you. We'll be talking about why traditional job search tactics don't work at the executive level, how to build a leadership brand that resonates, and what it really takes to lead your search with clarity, confidence, and credibility. So let's dive in. Thank you, Mark, for being here today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm so excited for this to reverse roles here because I got to be your first podcast guest where I was talking a lot, and now it's your turn. I'm gonna make you talk a lot.
Okay, shoot.
I'm excited for this. Okay, because you and I both work with a lot of folks that are in that VP, C-suite, even board level roles, and the job search is 100% different. I talk about this all the time with my folks. They're not applying and worried about applicant tracking systems. It's so much more relational than that. So talk to me about like what you're seeing in the job market, specifically when it comes to this upper level, enterprise level leadership. Why is the job search so different?
Well, one, there's less positions out there, right? You think of that pyramid. So there's only one CEO, there's only so many VPs, there's only so many directors, and then the individual contributor. So it gets harder as you're moving up the chain. So it's very important to network and to know folks because leadership is such a personal thing, right? You have to have the strategy as well as the personality to be able to handle it, right? To do a good job in that role. So when it comes to looking for those positions, it's really important to have relationships with recruiters, the hiring managers, leadership. It's very much about who you know in the market. And even with individual contributors, it is. I mean, you can apply to a job online and you have to go through the applicant tracking system. So there might be some AI in there, there might be some qualifications that will kick you out or push you forward. It all depends on how the recruiter sets it up. But anybody who says, hey, I know this job seeker, you should talk to them, they're going to get an interview. And so even if you can't get through the AI, that resume will be pulled and you'll have that conversation. And so if you're a leader, you usually should have some presence, right? There might be a LinkedIn profile, maybe you have your own podcast, maybe you're just speaking at conferences. But the idea is that you have something to say about your area of expertise. So not only do you have your brand, your personal brand, but people know you have a network. So it's very important to have relationships. It's very important to keep the communication going and not just click apply. You can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. But use your network to meet other folks. And you should be doing this regardless, right? Not just when you're job searching. If you're a C suite executive, you're making connections all over your community. Keep those connections going, right? If you're having a speech at a conference or you're a keynote or you're participating, you want to keep those connections because you have no idea when that opportunity is going to come knocking on your door. And so it's not just about hit apply. It's very much about your network and knowing folks who can recommend you for a position because they know your work ethos, they know your personality, they know your integrity. They can recommend you fully for that role.
Well, it's that idea of, like you said, personal brand combines with your leadership abilities. It's like a leadership brand at that point where it's all of these things, who you know gets you in front of folks. The executives that I work with are constantly saying, oh, well, yeah, I heard about this opportunity through a friend that I used to work with at MasterCard, and now I'm interested in this job at Visa. Right. So it's all of those connections that are gonna get the opportunities in front of you, and then knowing how to own your leadership brand, being clear about what that is, having that executive presence, being able to articulate results from your past. I would say, and tell me if you agree with this, the cultural fit is simultaneously the most important thing and a thing that we don't want to rely on exclusively with executives, because if we're saying you have to fit exactly into our culture, it means that you're going to keep doing things the way they've always been done. But at the executive level, you also have to say this might be the course you're on, but if we shift just a little bit, results could be better. And trust me, I have the proven expertise to do it in previous positions. So we're showing that you fit culturally in terms of leadership style, but that maybe you can demonstrate you're a little bit of a disruptor, you're going to change things a little bit and take the organization in a bigger, stronger, better, more amazing direction as the next executive. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's true. A lot of times companies will look outside of their organization because they want a disruptor. They want somebody to come in with a different perspective to shake things up. Doing the same thing over and over and over is insanity, right? So having that different perspective or that different expertise could make such a difference. So there's the branding part, who they are as a person, and as well as their expertise. So it's tactical versus strategy versus just how are you as in the whole package.
Yeah. Well, and I know you work a lot with women leaders and those folks who are moving up in their careers. I have found this to be really interesting, though, is that a lot of people, even at that level, have a really difficult time not necessarily articulating their value, but diving into the we rather than owning their accomplishments. So people who are really high performing leaders still struggle to articulate their value. Why do you think that is?
It's confidence. It's very much confidence. And the fact that they want to give credit to their team, which I love. I love that they want to give credit to their team and they want to mentor those junior members into more senior roles. I love that. But they have to understand or see how their leadership impacted that, right? So maybe they were mentoring the team lead and they grew their skills in delegation, right? Or maybe they set the strategy and they worked with their team to actually do the tactical steps involved. So it's rare to have big picture plus the tactical steps. So if you can create that, hey, I have the vision, I have the strategy, I'm going to partner with my team to work on this. You did have impact in that. You drove the vision. So I actually have an exercise, I statements, where I work with my leaders to actually say the word "I" with a verb. I excel at. I guided. I did these things because it is hard. It's okay to have we in the conversation, but you do have to take ownership of how you impacted the team.
Yeah. So, what other tips do you have then to help leaders stand out and make sure that they are articulating better? Like, what are some other ways that they can make themselves unique?
It depends on their industry, and I would say they have to lean on their leadership style more than their expertise, right?
Mm.
As career coaches, we are experts in the job search. We know all about the job search. But if you were to ask me about a specific niche, I may not have that expertise. And so you have to think about, oh, as a career coach, I offer authenticity. I offer clarity. I offer just plain information, right? I'm going to give you feedback that will be direct but kind and helpful. And so I weave in that I have these personality traits along with this is what I know about the job search. So if I don't know this little niche piece, I can research it, I can go learn it, or I have a team member that I can ask questions and get their guidance on. So we have to blend the tactical with the style that you have because that makes the who you are. That is your brand.
Yeah. I'm dealing with one leader right now who's in life sciences and has been the tactical lead science person over specific therapeutic areas, but has progressed up into director and VP level roles, overseeing therapeutic areas that he has no expertise in. But he can still demonstrate that he can lead those teams because he relies on the experts under him to have the details. He sets the vision and the strategy. So it's that same kind of concept. It's then about getting him to be confident in communicating his leadership style and really kind of connecting the dots between his past experiences and why that will make him successful for future experiences.
Right. And I've had leaders that they're people managers. They know how to lead a team. I've had a senior director, VP level client where they were in the information technology department, and they were project management, and they were doing strategy and digital transformation, and then they stepped over and started doing the hardware side, the help desk side, the infrastructure side. Does he know everything about that? No, but he knows how to grow leaders within his team. And so sometimes it's not about the tacticalness at all, it's more about your leadership skills. So you don't have to be an expert in that area. It could just be your leadership capabilities and what you make of that. So again, you got to pick and choose what are your strengths and how to brand that.
Yeah. And that's not easy to do, right? Like we see gaps all the time with folks between resumes, LinkedIn, interviewing. Like, where do you see the most common gaps that you're working with clients to fill?
It's honestly the accomplishments. They don't
Mm,
realize how much impact they have had. I don't know if
yeah.
every resume I see from a job seeker that's looking to work with me, it's full of responsibilities. And occasionally it'll say, oh, I did this, or this program was implemented, or this technology was implemented. It's hard for them to understand that, yes, your engineers did the work, but that was a part of your unit, so you can count that. And I love metrics. I mean, if you know your numbers, because a business is a business, bottom line always matters. So I love dollar signs and I love percentages if we can get in there. And I know that's a little tactical on the resume, but then think about it when you're talking to another leader and you're saying, I saved 20% or I saved millions. It makes an impact. It makes an impact. And they know you understand the big picture when it comes to the bottom line.
Right. Yeah. I love, people struggle with quantifiables in general, right? Like, well, I don't really know, or I that can't be attributed to me. But I love explaining. We have to show scale, scope, and outcomes, right? Because those are the three things that matter.
Yes.
That gives me trust that as the person hiring you for a VP, C-suite role, you can do what I need you to do. And if you're not demonstrating scale, scope, and outcomes, you're not going to be able to give that person confidence that you have the ability to walk in and do the job on day one at scale. And so it's simple things like we see so many responsibilities driven bullet points, like you said, on resumes. And I go, okay, great. Let's just take this and go, how much, how many, how often? There's your
Exactly.
numbers, right? That's all we have to do. It's not about trying to come up with, the exact 27.58%. Can we say more than 25%? Did this reduce cost by $100,000? Let's talk through some of those things. And then you start to get differentiated because then you're a lot more of a leadership narrative, right? You're less
Right.
of I have you heard the term obituary resumes, where it's like just like a
Yes.
list of job descriptions from everything you've ever done? You move away from the obituary resume into a real leadership narrative. What about on LinkedIn though? Because LinkedIn, you've got not only your profile, but then your thought leadership too. How do you fill in gaps for people there?
Yeah. So I really encourage my leaders to have presence on LinkedIn. First, I mean, the profile is a reflection of your resume. It shouldn't have everything on there, but it can have a summary of your skills. I never put dollar signs or percentages there, but I'll reference things, right? What was the main point of that role? Um, and then the thought leadership is huge. You almost have to think of yourself as a mini business, right? So you're selling your thoughts, you're selling your strategies, like you're just putting out there. Now, I say selling, and I shouldn't really say selling. Like, what are you offering to the world? How are you helping others, right?
It's
So
almost a
make
marketing tool.
it is a marketing tool. It very much is a marketing tool. So maybe you're just giving kudos to your team. That'd be
Mhm.
great. If you could acknowledge somebody on your team, then you're allowing your team member to be noticed in your network. And maybe that's an opportunity for them. Maybe there is something you're doing in your community, right? Organizations are very, very big components of our local communities. So maybe there's a community piece that you can speak about. Like, what are you passionate about? So the thought leadership, you don't have to be on there every day of the week, but once a week, right? Just put a post out there. We just saw Jay Carlisle from LinkedIn and at the conference, and he very much just did jaywalking where he was talking about things online. And you could have something as simple as that. It doesn't have to be this Canva pretty production. It could be text. It could just be your thoughts on things. with the market changes and businesses being affected, like talk about those things. Make it real, right? Real life, real leadership. How is it impacting your people? Or just talk about your leadership philosophy. I think
Yeah.
that's huge, right? If you're the best leaders are the ones that want to help their team grow, right?
Yeah.
They're the leaders grow leaders. That's who I love working with because they care, right? It's not, yes, it's about getting the job done, right? It's about making impact, but at the same time, how are you helping your team grow? I know it's funny. You want your team members to grow and maybe leave the organization, but that's their opportunity, right? Like that's you want to grow that team, and maybe they'll come back. And I have seen that quite a bit where folks will leave an organization to get some experience, and then they come back because they had such a great experience with their leader and with the organization as well. So leadership, it's huge. And there's some leaders that only care about themselves. They only care about the numbers. I think that is going away. I think as the generations, start coming into the workforce, we're starting to see more fit and more culture and more impact on families. Like, what do we care about as human beings versus just the 8 to 5, get everything done?
I like that. All right, so we're shoring up gaps in resumes, we're shoring up gaps in LinkedIn profiles, and this is something I wanted to come back to because we talked about interviewing a little bit before, where it's a lot of like the we versus I. In addition to gathering thoughts on like those skills and talking about leadership there, what about like preparing for interviews? Because it's one thing to talk in the moment, but what about the preparation for interviews that happens beforehand, where they can really start to talk, like think about, okay, here's how I'm going to get ready to walk in, where I don't know what they're going to ask me, I don't know if it'll be conversational, I don't know if it'll be formal or informal. How do you get people prepared for those interviews?
So I start with their introduction first. So it goes back to the I statements, it goes back to their strengths. I do not like the obituary resumes that you mentioned earlier. I mean, yes, I've read your resume. I know you have 20 years of experience in this, that, and the other. I've read it. I know that. And I also don't care if you're born and raised in Idaho or you've moved all the time. Like I don't need that level. What I need to know is what you offer. And so I start with a spark first. And I learned this from Lily Fogel, the interview coach. She's amazing. But your spark, who are you? What matters? What type of person are you? So I'm the kind of person that believes that everybody can succeed with the right amount of support and guidance. That's the first thing I say,
Ooh,
right?
that was great.
Right? So imagine you being a leader saying, I am the kind of person who, and you talk about who you are, like what actually matters to you. Then you talk about your experience. But let's think about this. What experience matters? I don't need to know that 20 years ago you started as a server at the restaurant, right? I just need to know you have 10 years doing this, you've implemented this program, you've done, think about the job that you're applying for, what actually matters. So you only pull out from your resume what matters. Then you talk about your strengths. What are your 3 strengths? What actually matters? And with that strategy, you set yourself apart because you've talked about the kind of person you are. You've highlighted how you're qualified for the role because you've picked out from your resume what actually matters. And then you've ended with your 3 strengths. And those 3 strengths will come up often throughout the interview. And so everything will backtrack to who this person is and their experience as well as their strengths.
I like that. Well, and this is like creating that leadership brand, right? Like there's different frameworks for it. I've heard like know, like, and trust, right? That's one that I've heard a
Yes.
lot. I've also heard the idea of clarity, credibility, and connection. So as you're getting people to the point of creating their leadership brand, where they're coming back to those common the principles, who they are at their core, what kinds of questions are you having people ponder and consider to solidify that in a way that doesn't sound vague and generic?
It's a lot of that comes through authentic conversations, right? I mean, many times during coaching sessions, we're sitting here and it's like, wait, that's exactly it. And we write it down or try to write it down, right? What did you just
Yeah.
say? Those moments. Um, I kind of come at it from a unique value proposition. So, let's deep dive. How did you get into this industry? Like, what brought you here? Because you see a lot of leaders, they have a degree in something completely unrelated, right? And it's like, well, I started that, I went into this led me here, and their stories are so interesting. So we talk about that passion. So why do you love what you do? Because that is one thing about leaders. They're not moving up the chain just to have power and authority. They're moving up the chain because they want to have more impact, genuinely, right? That's what I believe. And so, what is that passion? How did we get there, right? What are some challenges that you overcame during your career? I have some leaders that they went to college later in life, right? And they should talk about that, right? I have other leaders that have no college degree. Okay, well, how did you get there? Like, everyone is so unique. That's what's fun about what I do. Everybody is so unique. No one is the same. And so, talking about those challenges or those obstacles that they overcame, maybe talking about their mentor or somebody they admired, because a lot of times we'll see a leader that we want to emulate, like, oh, that is who I want to be. And then we'll have leaders that are like, we don't want to be like that. So picking
I've had
apart.
plenty of those.
Right, exactly, we all have. So, talking through what you want to be, and then as the career coach, I can go back going, "Okay, but you have done that. You have done that. You have done that." And a lot of that clarity comes through conversation. It's in that moment where the light bulb goes off and they're like, "Oh, I did do that." It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's the best part of the job. Very few times has have I written a resume and they're like, oh, I'm not this person, because they realize, like, these are the stories you told me on the call. I didn't make this up. You literally told me this. It's just framed in a way that they can see it. And then when we move into interviews, we start talking about their natural way of talking about it. That's the one thing I will say. Do not script everything. Do not memorize everything. Know your story. You know your stories, right? You might want to go, oh, I need this story because they're going to talk about this, and I need that story because they're going to talk about that, because you know the job description. But ultimately, you know your stories, and then you just figure out a way to tell those stories without rambling. That's the important part.
Okay, well, let's talk about that then. What type of framework? Because there's so many different interview frameworks, right? For answering any question that is join. So we talked about kind of the leadership brand and how you talk about yourself at a high level, but then when it gets into interviewing like a true leader, that is beyond, individual contributor things. When it comes to that enterprise level impact, what types of tips do you have for storytelling to show executive presence to communicate those stories effectively?
Yeah, there are many structures. There are
Yeah.
so many structures out there. I have heard of organizations that love the STAR method, and that's all they will ask is they will ask STAR method questions to get you to talk about your stories. So there's many. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. It's a great framework. There's CAR, there's PAR. I think you turned STAR into R star. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many. The one that I use is SOAR, SOAR, because again, I love obstacles. I love those success stories. So, situation, what's going on? What were you responsible for? Obstacles, what did you have to overcome? Because that's the piece we always forget about.
Mhm.
Action, what did you do? And again, those I statements, and then the results. So the results could be, maybe it's a customer experience result. Maybe you implemented something that just wowed your customers. If there's a metric to go along with it, I'd love to talk about it, but maybe that's you just bettered the experience. I mean, it doesn't have to be numbers. It can be the effect of what you've done, right? So yeah, I use that one because I love the obstacles piece to it. It makes it, I mean, because think about it, there's multi generations in the workforce now, right? Communication is different. We were at the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, and we have Slack, and we have email, and we have LinkedIn, and we have chat. Like, there's so many ways to communicate. That could be an obstacle. How do you manage all of these channels?
That's right.
I mean, you can go on and on. So
That's so interesting. Okay, I love that we're talking about this because my favorite thing is to put the result at the beginning to hit people hard at the front with what was the outcome of what you did. Oh yeah, I've dealt with that before. In fact, one time I did it so well, X, Y, and Z happened. Then we can go through obstacle, we can go through action. And I love, especially for leaders, I love this idea of instilling confidence in the person listening to you that you're going to be able to help them. So at the end of interview prep, for me, my last thing that I teach is relatability. Because if you can get the person to imagine you doing the job, you're going to be top of the list. And so I say relate the answer back to the question that they asked you. So if we're using your
Yes.
customer experience example here, we could say, because I was able to improve customer experiences like that back there, I will be able to come and do that same thing for you. And that relatability piece is really big because then suddenly the person listening to you is going, oh, I need you to do that. That would be great. Thank you,
Yeah.
and you are now top of the list. So that relatability piece is really cool too, and I think can really differentiate leaders from everybody else who's out there going like, I can manage a team to I can lead this team towards something better because I've got the experience to back it up.
Exactly, exactly. So the main point of all these structures is to match what they're looking for and not
Yes.
lose sight of the goal. Because we do have some talkers, and it's like nobody cares about that level of detail. Nobody cares. Bring it down.
That's right.
But I
Absolutely.
will, now that I say that too. So leaders, like the higher up you go, they need the bigger picture. If you're talking to the manager of the team, they might want to go tactical because they know the steps. So you do also have to understand your audience and who you're
Yeah.
talking to.
Yes, knowing your audience. I am so glad you said that because that is something that a lot of people forget about, right? We've talked about this before. Things like the resume, your LinkedIn profile, even interviewing. It's all about you, but it's not for you. It's for the person listening to you. And so you have to speak their language. You have to hit their pain points and understand what those are. So going into those interviews, if you know things about the company, we learned this from Lily too at the conference a couple weeks ago. If you know who you're talking to so well that you've gone beyond just reading the job description and beyond just reading the website, can you do some deep research? What has been happening at the C level? What is the corporate direction? Let's talk about the market that this company is in. How competitive is it? What are the challenges facing it? And if you can know that company so deeply, then that relatability piece becomes, hey, I've been researching and I know that your biggest competitor grew by 50% last year. That's a risk to this organization. I
Yeah.
know how to squash that competition and I will do it because I've done something similar in the past. Right? Like that's what elevates you above other people.
And there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? So
Ooh, yeah.
very much like I can do this because I have done this or I have the skills to do this without sounding like I'm going to solve all your problems, right? So we
Yeah.
still need that collaboration piece. We still need that communication piece, the leadership qualities, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important that yes, I can do this, but I also have all these strengths. So I can do this. Like you have to make that match.
Yeah. Do you find that the women leaders you're dealing with don't have enough of the confidence and the men who are leaders have too much of the confidence? Is that stereotype or is that actually what you found to be the case?
It's no, it's fairly accurate. I've had so the women, their confidence isn't there, right? I
Mm,
tend to find, and I have had some powerhouses that have come through. I'm like, oh, you're gonna do great. Like, there's no confidence building there because they're already confident. But it's the women leaders that are moving up. They worry about that. So maybe their manager going to director, director to VP. They have that confidence issue because they go from two or three people to a team of 60, right? That's a lot of responsibility. The men, it's kind of the same thing. If they're in those lower ranks trying to move up, they have that confidence piece. But when it comes to VP and above, men are just like, oh no, I did this, 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 and this, right? And women do the
yeah.
we.
Right. That's so
So,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay, so then you're talking about the leadership aspect, the confidence of it all. I find that people are really uncomfortable, uncertain about the job market and the job search itself. So, how are you helping leaders to take ownership of their job search and be proactive with it? What steps are you recommending for them to take to kind of take the bull by the horns and own that job search process?
absolutely. One, acknowledge that it's going to take time. This is not a 2 week, 4 week, 6 week turnaround. The higher up you are in the leadership roles, the longer it will take. One, there's not as many roles. So, in some sense, your job search will be easier because you're looking for specific roles. So, if they're there, you apply. If they're not, you don't apply. But there's also the networking piece, right? You do have to get to know people. And sometimes that's a agency, a recruiting agency. Sometimes that's reaching out to other leaders or maybe your past leaders to see what's going on. So acknowledging one that it'll take time, and then two, doing communications, right? Reach out to people, talk to folks. And then three, set yourself some goals. And this is where a career coach really comes in handy. And I hear this over and over and over. My clients will go a little stir crazy and then they meet with me, they ask all their questions. I'm like, oh, okay. Or it's just, hey, you got a lot going on. You're working full time and you have kids and you have a dog. And so it's like, all right, let's piecemeal this. This week, you're going to do this. Next week, you're going to do this. And that's still moving forward, right? I do not believe in the, let's do 60 applications in a week. It's a waste of time. It's a waste
Yeah.
of time. You're up against AI. Like you have to be human. You have to network. The only time I've ever seen anything like that actually work in the sense, not applying to jobs, was a sales guy would put his resume up on a job board and then he had all these people calling him. Um, I don't know how much of them were scams, but there was at least a lot of visibility. But sales, I think, is its own beast because if you have the
Yeah.
numbers and you talk numbers, people are going to be calling you left and right. But when you're talking about confidential issues and you're dealing with a very, very big organization, then it's much harder. So then you have to put in that thought leadership. So there's a lot of groundwork that you have to do before the interview process starts. And then the interview process can take forever. Especially again, if you're C-suite, you got to deal with the board. If you're a VP, you might just be dealing with the CEO. So I mean, there's so many aspects to it. And they're making interviews more complicated. There's video interviews, there's essays, there's presentations, there's assessments. But again, if you know folks and you're networking, or even if a recruiter is on your side, you're going to get through faster just because you have that human connection.
That's right. All right, so I want your soundbite moment, right? This is the if you were to say one thing, advice for leaders who are on the cusp of some sort of change. Those who maybe are in a transition, they might be feeling burnt out. They might feel like they're set back a little bit. I want to know what you're going to tell them as the encouragement to get them to persist and keep going.
Oh, that is a good one. Map it out, right? Start writing about your what do you want out of this change, right? Sometimes it's money. That's totally fine. If it's money, it's money, right? A lot of us receive what's the word I'm looking for? Um, what is the word I'm looking for? Where self-acceptance, maybe
Mm,
it's hey, I made 300,000 this year. In other cases, it might be work-life balance, right? They want the remote role or they want the hybrid role. I will say remote's getting harder and harder, but hybrid is still out there, right?
yeah.
Maybe it's the mission of the organization. I have had leaders do the Fortune 50s and then they switch to nonprofit because they want to have a mission-driven organization. That's
Yeah.
a huge change, right? So you have to list out what it is that you want and then prioritize them because the chances of getting everything might actually not work out. So, very much what is important to you? What are the must haves? What are the nice to haves? And then go for it. And if you're working, take advantage. Don't just take the first job that you get. Take advantage. Think about those things, and then you negotiate. Feel empowered to negotiate. And I think the higher up, the more experience you have. But if you're in that director level and you're moving to VP and think, you're finally getting into where you have some meat to look at, then that's where it's important. So you have to know what you want to have, and then what are the nice to have.
That's right. I love that. This is an interesting conversation because leaders we see leaders. I've had some amazing leaders and I almost see them as superhuman right? And then we realize they deal with the same insecurities, they deal with the same confidence issues, they deal with the same frustrating long job search.
Yep.
They're frustrated trying to market themselves. And so this is a great resource, right? We have professionals like you and me, career coaches, resume writers, folks who can help. But I always tell people to rely on peers and mentors, people you can really trust to talk through things and kind of create that kind of counsel around you who says, you've got this, you can do this, you're worthy of all of this. And then you get into the strategy, then you get into the tactics of it all, and it starts to become easier as you plan and are intentional and strategic about it. Without that intentionality, without the strategy, without the planning, it all starts to fall apart. But when you have somebody like you to work with, it makes it so much easier. So you're doing amazing work with these leaders because you're radically changing people's lives, which will then have ripples through generations. It's very exciting. I love seeing what you do.
Oh, thank you. No, I really love it just because one person can affect hundreds, right, in that next role. And so it's important, but it is important to plan. No matter what level you're at, plan out where you want to go, make your career plan internally, externally, whatever you need to do. How do you get there? Right. And so work with a career coach, find one in your local area, find one online. I mean, there's the industry, there's a lot of career service professionals that are passionate about this role and about helping others succeed in their careers because it affects your life and it affects the lives of those that you manage. So it's very, very important.
That's right.
Mark, thank you so much for taking your time to chat with me today and to interview
Of
me.
course.
This was super fun having the double side conversation. It was great. So if anyone wants to reach out to us, the contact details are below in the description. Mark Missiano from Resume Ready, and I am from Next Step Career Services. So everybody, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.